Welcome to part 2 of Iberian Lawyer Agenda Africa Forum in collaboration with Cabeçadas, Miranda and Vinjeru Almeida. In this session, we will discuss Mozambique's success in the balance.
We'll show you how the values of M&A activity since 2007 in Mozambique has been very low. Until last year, we saw a really sudden leap up to 7 deals worth $9.6 billion. That was 15 times above the 2012 value, which was just one deal worth 167 million. One of the reasons for this activity that we can see the increase in is down to the geographies. They're becoming more interested in Mozambique companies. Shows the proportion of deals from 2001 to 2006, which is very much limited to just Africa, Asia and Europe there, with Africa taking the majority. But post-2006, it's a lot more diversified, and those proportions have changed in the sense that we can see Asia-Pacific has quadrupled its number of deals and takes a 39.1% share now. And Europe follows that, with Africa closely behind. Naturally, the energy, mining, utilities sector is taking the majority there with 50%. And that's not likely to, obviously, falter in any way with ongoing explorations and new projects. But interestingly, the infrastructure and financial services sectors both taking 17.9% of the proportion. And financial services is increasing across the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, and it's only just getting started.
As Kirsty's heat chart shows, financial services is one of the sectors that is still on the rise in terms of M&A, not just in Mozambique, but throughout the continent of Africa. The year 2013 in Mozambique in particular saw an uptick in the number of deals in the financial services sector. We saw acquisitions of stakes in Mozambican local banks from the likes of Nedbank in South Africa, for example, and First Merchant Bank in Malawi was another example. And what this really highlights is how African banks are becoming a lot more aggressive about pursuing regional expansion through M&A. And also in the TMT sector, it's another one of the sectors that's looking to be promising for investors. Last year in Mozambique, we saw just a handful of media and technology deals and joint ventures, mostly involving Portuguese companies as bidders, and it's the telecom sector which has the most potential to really boost values in terms of future deals in Mozambique. That the consumer sectors is one of the key sectors that investors are beginning to look into in Mozambique. So with Mozambique coming out in the top 10 of A.T. Kearney's African Retail Development Index, I don't know if anyone saw that published last month. That was a key indicator of interest in Mozambique. That was published with Mozambique featuring alongside more established consumer economies such as South Africa and Namibia and a couple of others.
We've heard some very interesting remarks on the Mozambican gas. I think that's a real game changer for Mozambique. The government is also very committed to taking early advantages of the rewards brought about by the gas play. There were a number of public announcements of legislative initiatives that signal a strategy for the gas sector, and that, in my opinion, comprise 3 main elements. First, a strong local content framework across the entire value chain. Second, the use of domestic gas to streamline the industrial development of Mozambique. And third, the increase of fiscal revenue. The new petroleum law, the original purpose was to create a legal framework for LNG activities. It introduces a new type of concession contract, the FCC, the Facilities Concession Contract. That's probably not going to be enough. We will probably need tailor-made legislation to implement this project. But in terms of local content, it has, a rather generic but extremely important principle saying that foreign companies wishing to provide services to the industry, they need to associate themselves with Mozambican citizens or with Mozambican companies. On the labor side, and since 2011, with these new expat hiring regulations for the petroleum sector, you have a quota system in place, according to which both IOCs and service providers, they can employ a certain percentage of expats, depending on the total workforce of the company or of the local operation of that company. This percentage varies between 5 and 10%. There seems to be a consensus that LNG should be a priority, that other projects shall only be implemented after the beginning of LNG exports. But there are some sectors that were identified as creating a market for the gas, and that can be used to create an industrial hub in Cabo Delgado. For example, methanol, for example, fertilizers, gas to liquids, power production. Mozambique may be a new kid on the block, but foreign investors will need to be prepared to operate within a legal framework that already incorporates the perceived potential of Mozambique and the interest that it raises internationally.
In the mid-'80s, since the mid-'80s, Mozambique has been in a process of a series of changes to its political, economic, and social structure. And with the adoption of its new constitution in 1990, the country opened itself up to a multi-party democracy, although, as was previously mentioned, there's still a clear dominant party, as well as to a free market economy. And with the adoption of the new constitution, there was also a long process of legislative reform, which is still continuing today. In terms of discussing the major challenges or some of the current challenges for the mining sector, I would mention, first and foremost, transportation infrastructure. We have a mining concession. There are wonderful reserves of thermal and coking coal, but without the possibility of setting up an infrastructure in which to export that coal, really the investment is not worth it. In addition, I think you have to look at power supply. With a lot of the increased investment comes increased amounts of people here. The PPP law and its regulation. We've had the competition law being passed. We've had a resettlement regulation that deals with how resettlements will take place. We've also had legislation on explosives. So there's just been a real tremendous amount of legal drafting and passing enactments of laws over the last couple of years. So it's a very exciting time in terms of the development of the legal framework, but it also creates more uncertainty.
When, and this when is very important because there'll be a new election and you don't know if the parliament will pass these laws, the various acts on the petroleum mining, for instance, and also if there'll be an act on the LNG project. There is a stronger interest of involvement of the government itself and also of the local content. The government is taking some initiatives that, for instance, they've granted the concession of the harbors of Palma and Nacala and Pemba to a joint venture between two government companies, which are the Railways Company and ENH, the hydrocarbon, the petroleum company. So they have started to implement this concession when the concessionaires Anadarko and Eni expect to be themselves building, operating such facilities. The challenge will be in the near future, mainly around the regulatory matters. Let's say relationship with the specific laws of the various sectors. I would say that besides petroleum and mining, energy, electricity, special hydropower will need also in the near future to be revised. Other challenge area is in the equity market, the finance sector. There will be, in some cases, need to recourse to the stock exchange of Mozambique in order to enforce some of the local content requirements. One of them is to sell in the stock exchange for Mozambican at least 5 to 20% of the stocks in these various undertakings.
I just want to reiterate as a civil servant, as working in our embassy, that we need you, but we need you in a long-term partnership, engagement. As you can see, we have to run fast, we have to walk fast, but in fact, we are still in a very learning process.